Welcome back to the Done Deal Show. I'm joined as ever on Wednesdays by the brilliant Ben Jacobs. How are you, my friend?
After yesterday's desert-like weather across the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you're a busy man traveling around. The transfer window last night at a surge in heat as well. Lots of things hotting up in relation to the transfer market. So lots to delve into and talk about today with people excited. We're going to be talking Jules Kounde to Chelsea or Barca, updates on Kimpembe, the De Jong hijack, what is going on there? We're talking Ronaldo, we're talking Richards to Palace, and much, much more. Any questions you've got, feel free to send them in. Of course, we prioritize the super chats and member chats from our audience. And the one I really want to start off with you on, if it's okay, Ben, is Cristiano Ronaldo, because you said last week very much he may end up having to stay because no one else is in for him. Since then, there's been talks of Saudi Arabia. There's been talks of Atletico Madrid, but nothing really concrete. What's the latest on Cristiano Ronaldo's potential exit from Manchester United?
I mean, first of all, we have to start with the premise that Ronaldo only wants to leave Manchester United to challenge for elite level competition. And unless he's disingenuous in that position, then it rules out a number of clubs. So it would be damning, really, on Manchester United if Ronaldo left Old Trafford to go to, say, Saudi Arabia, regardless of what the financial offer is, because at 37 years of age, we're led to believe by people close to Ronaldo that his next career decision, whether staying at Manchester United or going, is all based upon football and ambition. And he's returned to Manchester United comparative to the first spell, and the football club is different, and he's shocked by the drop in standards and culture as well, on and off the football field. So therefore, Ronaldo wants Champions League football. And I also think he wants to be part of a team where the burden is not on him, because there's a private acceptance, even if he doesn't explicitly say this, that he's not capable of single-handedly pulling a team, whether Manchester United or other, to elite level performances week in, week out. But if he joins a team with depth in squad and plays in the big games, I think then he thinks that he can contribute. And that, again, is why there's the desire to go and play Champions League football. So I think that we see the real Ronaldo now over the course of the next week or two, because he's either going to have to return to Manchester United, and Ten Hag has been blindsided by all of this. They've not had a meaningful conversation since Ronaldo has stayed away from pre-season, and there needs to be a frank and honest discussion internally to establish what Ronaldo really wants, because we've heard it's a frustration at a 25 pay cut. It's a shock at how standards have dropped at Manchester United. It's a disappointment with the business in the window. And now all these offers are creeping in from the likes of Saudi Arabia. MLS are interested in the long term in Ronaldo as well. And various franchises have made historical inquiries about him before this kind of saga blew up. But Ronaldo, again, keeps saying, and people close to him are confirming this, that it is all about challenging for the very, very best, which you're not going to get in Saudi Arabia. So then what clubs are really left? Well, there's Napoli, who have a long-standing interest but can't make the financials work. And now there's Atleti. Chelsea have obviously decided not to move for Ronaldo, and it remains to be seen whether Manchester United would even sell to a Premier League rival. And with Atleti specifically, it's being pushed very hard on the Ronaldo side. So it is 100% true that Ronaldo, despite his Real Madrid links, is very interested by a move to Atletico Madrid. And Jorge Mendes has had talks with Atleti to explore the situation. And Diego Simeone is not, in theory, against the move either. But the challenge from Atleti's point of view is making the financials work, even if Ronaldo was to take a pay cut, and they would have to sell first. So at the moment, Atleti are distancing themselves from Ronaldo because it's not feasible imminently. And if they want to make it feasible, they have to kind of change their whole summer plan to focus on outgoings and to free up the financials to make the move work. So it's not impossible, and Ronaldo is pushing for it. But remember, regardless of what he wants, until he gets a concrete offer, Manchester United have got all of the power here, and their stance remains not for sale. And some fans will hear that and say, well, of course, if Ronaldo then finds a club, Manchester United will change their position, especially if it's not a Premier League club. But Manchester United are not happy with the situation because they know that it's dragging on and it's overshadowing the new Ten Hag era. So they are planning with Ronaldo, not without Ronaldo. And that's a really intriguing power dynamic, because who's got the final say here? Is it the new manager, Ten Hag, and Manchester United with a contracted player? Or when Ronaldo wants out, is that the end of the matter because he can just force an exit? And I think that Ronaldo still thinks the situation is in his control, but he can't really do anything until he gets a formal, concrete offer to bring to Manchester United as leverage. So not impossible that Atleti could make a move, but at the moment, Ronaldo's short on options.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I had a video that came out this morning that was kind of focusing on what Ten Hag said in that interview a few days ago about Ronaldo isn't for sale, I'm planning around him. And I've got a bit of a bugbear with fans at the moment that take everything managers say literally, or their interpretation of a word they use. You know, we all kind of, you're trained in the English language far better than this dyslexic ex builder, building merchant worker. Actually, not even a builder. I wasn't good enough for that. I had to cut the wood and give it to the builders. But words have multiple meanings, and when someone's speaking, sometimes their third language, they don't always use the same words that you may, if that makes sense. And people like listening to Ten Hag speak, and they're like, "Oh, hang on a minute, like, he said that he's staying. Oh, that must mean he's staying 100%. I'm going to hold him to that." It's like, well, of course, Ten Hag's going to say what he's saying, because if he ends up staying, he's never, he hasn't hung the player out to dry. He hasn't created a situation where Ronaldo now has to leave or looks like he's like pushing for a move away. Equally, if a proposition presents itself that everybody's happy with, he can just say, well, look, I was planning to keep him, but the offer was too good to turn down. The player wanted it, and we're all happy. And listen, I think United are definitely open to him leaving, even though their public stance is very much that he is not for sale. But it does appear that he's running out of options. And that was the kind of report that's been circulating this morning, that, you know, he wants to leave, but there's no one really that wants to pay him that £500,000 a week. You know, he's also seeking, I've read in a few places, more than a 1-year deal. You know, people paying £500,000 a week to him, and you never know. Even though Ronaldo's brilliant, he could just hit a wall at some point where his body just stops working, and then you're left with 12 months of paying someone £500,000 a week. It's a lot of money for a club to have to invest in somebody. So it's interesting to see what direction that's going to go in. In sort of staying with Man United briefly on this, what's kind of next as far as you're aware in relation to Man United buying somebody else? Lissandro's done. Eriksen's done. Of course, Malassi is in the team. I know we're going to move on to Frankie Jong a little bit later in terms of Chelsea links, but in terms of an attacking option or a right back, is that something you can see Man United doing, or would that depend upon Ronaldo leaving, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they need to resolve the Ronaldo situation, and that's also because any incoming is likely, particularly if they're a more attack-minded player, to ask the question, is Ronaldo playing or not? It's a big factor in various targets coming to a football club. First of all, because if you're playing in his position or around his position, you need to know whether you've got that relationship or competition against Ronaldo. And similarly, there is a breed of player that will be attracted more towards Ronaldo than Manchester United. He's a selling point for the football club. And if there's uncertainty and he exits, then there's another type of player that will see opportunism to kind of step into his shoes. So the clarity is really important. And that's why it's going to affect Manchester United's window. And then just coming back to what you said about Ten Hag and managers speaking out in public, no football manager is ever going to say a player is leaving before he's actually gone. So they're either going to be coy or they'll reiterate the club stance, which is not for sale. And that may well, by the way, be true at the time that Ten Hag is speaking, because there's no concrete offers. The window, though, still has over a month remaining. So what Ten Hag says now versus after he's spoken to Ronaldo versus when a concrete offer, or if one anyway, comes in, can be completely different. And that doesn't mean that he's U-turned or he's misleading fans and media. It simply means that he is talking at the time accurately and saying that Cristiano Ronaldo is part of his plans. And then in terms of other positions where Manchester United may need to strengthen, I think the right back is definitely a possibility. I think the priority is still Jong or an equivalent in midfield. And then the window could be shaken up from Manchester United's perspective because they may have to replace Ronaldo. And the reason why I keep saying in a lot of different interviews that Ten Hag has been blindsided is because Manchester United have not thought about replacing Ronaldo in this window. And this is one of the biggest weaknesses of Manchester United Football Club and their recruitment model, that what they do is act in a short-termist way. So whereas Manchester City, I can guarantee you, will already be drawing up a shortlist to replace Erling Haaland, and Liverpool will have been looking at Mane replacements prior to getting in Darwin Núñez for the best part of 2 seasons, if not more. And scouts are working on tapping up young players, not, by the way, in an illegal sense, but actually working with them to develop the relationships, to gain the trust of the family, to go and watch them play, to establish what their development will be like, looking at data and then using those projections to see where that 19 or 20 or 21-year-old might end up. These clubs are doing all of that as of now. And many scouts tell me the same thing, that on day one of bringing in a flagship signing, the first thing that the analytics team and the scouting team do is draw up the replacement list. Manchester United know in Ronaldo they've got a 37-year-old, and yet for whatever reason, they've not thought yet about who his replacement is going to be and are not planning on replacing him for at least another year. And that's crazy because it's so archaic and old-fashioned to expect Ronaldo to just paper over the cracks and drag the team back into Champions League football. And then you say, okay, now what? And the reason why they do it is because Manchester United, even with their brilliant history and fan base, cannot get the targets they would ideally want to replace Cristiano Ronaldo, who is world-class and box office, even at 37, unless they've got Champions League football. So it's kind of a mouse, because you can't delve into the market now and say, I want this player, if you know that player only wants Champions League football. You've got to get back on the football field to where the club needs to be, which they're reliant on Ronaldo to do, before you can bring in that like-for-like replacement. And of course, they need to be younger than Ronaldo as well, so then they have some kind of longevity at Manchester United.
Absolutely. And I've seen the United fans, again, get really annoyed in the last couple of days. And their annoyance is, well, if Maguire and Martinez become number 1 and number 2, they're the main centre-backs. What a waste of money. What a bad investment Rafael Varane was. And it's almost, they're kind of taking it out. We can't waste him. We have to use him. This is a disgrace. And I'm kind of sitting back and laughing, because I'm like, well, this is what happens when you rebuild every 18 months. You end up with players, and sometimes expensive ones, that become surplus to requirements because the new manager may not want, rate, or need that person, which is why a club-based plan, and I always use Bayern Munich, Ajax are another example, Dortmund, one of my favorite run clubs in the world, Brighton. They have a club plan, and the manager is basically a coach who comes in and helps them coach the team and pick the team. But the club has a philosophy beyond that manager. And that, for me, is what Man United need to create. And I've been talking about it for 5, 6, 7 years, because if you keep, even if Ten Hag is successful, the next manager and his team have a completely different ideology on football, you'll end up with a squad that's not fit for purpose. And therefore you end up in this situation again. And as you say, you can't draw up plans for a striker to replace, you can't draw up plans for a defender to replace Maguire in 3 years' time if you don't know who your manager is going to be, the style of football you're going to play, and the philosophy at the club in 3 years' time. It becomes an impossible task, and it's high time fans get on board with that notion. But viewers, make sure you're smashing that like button. We've got Kounde news, Kimpembe news, De Jong news on the way, so stay with us. Make sure the like button is being smashed and that you're subscribing to the Football Terrace. I did want to talk about another deal kind of slightly out of the top 6 realm before we move on to Chelsea and some updates on Arsenal as well. Crystal Palace about to sign a quite young American defender, Chris Richards, I believe.
Yeah, Chris Richards in a deal worth all in around £11 million, or just under 15 million euros. And this is a really intriguing signing because Richards is a US men's national team international with a fair amount of versatility, and that's the appeal to Patrick Vieira. And Bayern have kind of changed their stance, probably more since January rather than in the last days or weeks, and they are prepared to let Richards go. He was on loan at Hoffenheim in 2021, 2022. And he's only won 8 caps for the US men's national team, but is obviously a player that's hoping to be a relatively integral part at Qatar 2022. But he can't do that unless he plays regular first team football. So it's a move that I think will benefit both Richards and Crystal Palace. It's a reasonably high fee for a player this young who hasn't played a ton of games across Europe, really. Let's not forget that he joined Bayern Munich and played a range of games first in 1920 for their second team. But as far as actually match time for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, he's only played a handful of games. And then most of the experience at top European level has come in the loan spell with Hoffenheim, where he's played almost 35 times and scored 1 goal. But I think what Patrick Vieira likes about him is the fact he can play in a variety of different positions. He's controlled on the ball. He's got a good turn of pace. His positional sense is strong. I think that there's scope to improve that split-second decision making. And that comes down to confidence and game time and a regular run in the team. But he's exactly really what Crystal Palace need for, as I say, a relatively high yet potentially bargain price. And obviously when I say high but bargain, people will say that that's an oxymoron, but it's high because he's 22. And as I say, doesn't have a ton of game time, not for Bayern anyway, but it's bargain because he's 22. And I think that most Bayern fans that have seen him through Hoffenheim will say that he's got a huge amount of potential. So then Crystal Palace have got the opportunity to develop him. He'll take well to the coaching of Vieira, who's very good at that kind of man management. And he's just the type of player that when he hits a purple patch can have a huge amount of confidence and composure on the ball. And if he's integral at Crystal Palace, he'll be an excellent signing who should really relish playing in the Premier League. And the main motivation for Richards in making the move is plain and simple, that it's a World Cup year and he wants the game time. And that's really interesting in terms of also Bayern's thinking, because it's that Winter World Cup once again and how it's influencing this window early. There's a range of players that know they're going to be involved in a World Cup, or at least aspire to be, and they want their future sorted early this summer in the window. Whereas if it was a Summer World Cup, let's say next summer, then Richards might have said, okay, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to try and fight for my place at Bayern. I'm going to go out on loan somewhere else again. But players, and Broja might fall into this category, even though he's not going to the World Cup. But it's in that mentality, again, of saying, well, actually, as a young player, I want the future sorted now. I'm sick and tired of going out on loan. They're different because one's going to a World Cup and the other isn't. But I just think that it's infectious, this desire of young players at this point in the window, through their agents or even directly to managers, to be saying, listen, I know this is your long-term plan, but I've done the loan thing. I'm sick and tired of new dressing rooms, new managers, new tactics, new houses, instability, revisiting my situation in a year's time. And this young generation of players now, perhaps more so than the generation before them, seemingly are taking their futures by the scruff of the neck and having a more vocal say and trying to get that stability. And if it isn't stability, it's pathway. So if you're Bayern, you either had to say to Richards, this is your pathway to the first team, and we've got a clear and specific roadmap. And here is how we see you playing. Here's how many games we see you playing. And this is how it's going to materialize if your form holds up and your development continues. And if it doesn't, the player's saying, well, I'm not prepared to go on loan anymore. Just sell me because I've got a great offer in another strong league, also at the top level, where I can play regular first team football. And because of that World Cup also looming in Richards' case, that's part of the motivation. So it's kind of win-win, because I think that Bayern do see him as surplus to requirements and they've got a decent fee. And then Richards is going to get first team football in the Premier League, which will help him ahead of the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And Palace have got a nice sort of recent history, as you say, of signing very talented young players, giving them that game time and sort of taking them to that next level. So it sounds like a really good piece of business for Patrick Vieira and Crystal Palace. Staying in London, speaking of another young player, and this transfer saga has been going on a long time. And it now seems like it's coming to a head. And everybody is very, very interested in what is happening with the brilliant Jules Kounde, Chelsea, Barca. What's the latest there, Ben? What's going on in that world?
I mean, everybody is starting with the premise, particularly on Twitter, that it's going to be a Rafinha repeat and that Chelsea are going to be bullish and agree an offer. And then Barcelona are going to swoop in at the last minute and somehow convince the player to join them. But I would be wary of making too many direct comparisons with Rafinha for two reasons: that Sevilla are not Leeds United, and that Kounde has had his heart set on a Chelsea move long before Barcelona's interest materialised. Let's not forget, Chelsea thought that they had Jules Kounde under the old regime and even in the early part of the window as well. So whereas Rafinha was open to a Chelsea move and broadly speaking would have accepted the financials, it was clear that his number one club was Barcelona, and he was pushing and working with Leeds to try and get that deal done. With Jules Kounde, it's a little bit different because Kounde has scouted properties in London over the early part of the window. He is sold on Thomas Tuchel, who he's spoken to on more than one occasion, and he has already agreed personal terms, broadly speaking, with Chelsea Football Club. So it's not a situation where the player has an A choice and a B choice. It's a situation where Jules Kounde likes the idea of a Chelsea move and is equally impressed by Xavi and the conversations that he's had with him, and will be prepared to join both clubs. So that allows Sevilla far more leverage comparative to Leeds United, because they can agree a deal with Chelsea, who are more advanced in the negotiations, club to club, and then Barcelona become in a far more difficult position because Sevilla are going to play hard ball. Barcelona are not going to be able to put down 40, 45, 50 million euros and get any kind of cut price deal here. So naturally, Barcelona are waiting for the activation of the second lever, and then they will have some income that they can put towards transfers. And we know that defense, by the way, is Barcelona's priority. So they could make a move, but as yet they haven't. So the situation as of this morning, and by the way, when people are watching this online, it will absolutely change by end of business or close of play today, because Sevilla want a resolution ideally by Thursday, because they're off to Portugal to continue their pre-season. So as a consequence, this is very fast moving. But the state of play as of this morning is that Chelsea originally tried for 55 million euros all in, and that wasn't quite enough. Sevilla's starting point, as I've previously reported, has always been around 65 million euros, but Chelsea are confident that somewhere around the 60 million euro mark, maybe a touch north, will be enough to agree a deal. And then from there, Monchi is going to be pushing really, really hard, because Sevilla would prefer to pay the sort of respect to Chelsea, because they believe they've gone about the negotiations the right way to get the deal done as quickly as possible, which benefits the player, which benefits Sevilla, which benefits Chelsea. Now, Sevilla will listen to Barcelona if they make a tangible offer. But what Monchi has said to Barca is, you have to actually give us something formal and quick. Otherwise, we're signing off with Chelsea and we'll move on from there. And because Jules Kounde also wants his future resolved, that all plays into Chelsea's advantage. So Chelsea are the front runners. There's no denying it. Chelsea are close to agreeing a fee and are likely to do that by the close of play today. And Kounde is open to a Chelsea move. So the only caveat to all of that is we don't yet know Barcelona's hand. And are they going to back off because they don't want to be involved in a bidding war? Or are they going to come late in with an equivalent offer? And then it becomes an open race because Kounde is willing to join both clubs. So naturally, Chelsea is speaking with confidence. Barcelona is still pushing directly with the player to try and get buy-in and have him reject all other offers. And there is interest, by the way, beyond just Barcelona and Chelsea, but those are the two that are the most advanced. So it's finely poised at the moment, but as of the time of recording, Chelsea feel that they are ahead in the race.
And that makes a lot of sense, as you say, that they'll maybe when they come to that agreement by the end of today with Sevilla for the player, that is what kind of tempts Barcelona along. What I still find really interesting about Barca, and we know they've been able to raise money through the sale of assets, essentially. still seeing reports coming out of Spain, and I know that this is kind of confusing to a lot of fans. There's still a lot of reports saying that they can't, even though they've announced these players, there's still no registration because they have to sell people, but they've got more assets and more sales kind of coming through to raise money, as it were. But again, depends as to whether or not that. What I'm not being given any information on is you're only allowed to spend up to 70%, I believe, of your income on salary, but it's whether or not the sale of these assets count as like direct income to the business. And I'm not too sure because I know in England it does, like when you sell an asset, it can count as turnover. I'm not too sure the rules in Spain, but maybe that's what's giving Chelsea a bit of an advantage as well, because a lot of money has already been spent, as it were, and they're still looking to, of course, move Memphis on and De Jong on. I know we're going to move on to De Jong a little bit later, but yeah, Chelsea with Jules Kounde. I mean, it's such an interesting and finely balanced deal. I'm quite enjoying watching the ebb and the flow and to coin your phrase, the fluidity of the market in this situation with the player. I mean, what I find brilliant about it is the player is just like sitting there and going, well, I'm just going to sit here and wait. I'm kind of happy with both. He might have we know where he's got preferences, and let's just see where the best offer comes in from. And, the world's his oyster right now, Jules Kounde. He's either going to end up at Barcelona or Chelsea. It's not bad. It's not a bad thing to have to choose beyond. Sully here says, nice to Chelsea, yet slate Man United. Chelsea are getting rejected. That's the facts. Sully, I think he's a Man United fan. Is a bit put out by you, Ben.
Spend $5 on saying that is commitment. That is all I'll say. And it's not genuinely, by the way, a case that there's any agenda against Manchester United, and there's no nicety towards Chelsea. That's not how journalists work within the window. It's just the reality of the situation that Chelsea are in a transitional phase under new ownership, and they are going to develop a new model. They've changed their board, and they're trying, out of necessity to some extent, but also ambition, to bring in as many as 5 or 6. And the reason for that is because the volume of outgoing, says Paqueta to Barcelona, is also looking imminent as well. Rudiger's gone, Alonso wants out, Lukaku has gone on loan to Inter. So Chelsea were always going to have to be busy in the market. And Raheem Sterling, for me, is an excellent and flagship signing. And then Koulibaly was one of the best defenders in Serie A last season. And if they get a youngster like Jules Kounde with bottomless talent, Chelsea will be on course for a good window. Arsenal have had a great window so far. Spurs have had a great window so far. From Manchester United's perspective, it's not a case of slating, as you put it, the football club. It's actually the opposite from my perspective, that I grew up watching Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson, saw them win trebles, and my affinity is with the sort of Schmeichels, and even dating back a bit further, Parkers, Pallisters, Cantonars, Irwin, Hughes, Giggs, and so on. And when you think about that Manchester United, they were phenomenal to watch. There was a team spirit, there was a club strategy, and there was success on and off the football field. And the challenge at Manchester United is that the strategy is so inconsistent. The affinity between the ownership group and the fan base is relatively non-existent. And when I say this, I'm not giving you that opinion because I somehow have an agenda against Manchester United. I'm making that point because I'm sad to see how far Manchester United have fallen. And it would be great to see a Manchester United that are not ridiculed, that are not inconsistent, that are not changing their managers every season, that have a recruitment strategy, that have a more united dressing room, that start thinking about their future, not their past. And this is all said out of a respect for Manchester United Football Club, but you cannot live off your past alone. And the strategy on and off the football field is so ad hoc, is so disorganized, is so uninspiring, is so stale, that then when a manager that's genuinely very exciting and forward thinking like Ten Hag comes in, he has to try and pull the whole football club in a completely different direction. And he has to try and unite the factions and have that relationship with the ownership group, all on a relatively modest budget comparative to United's rivals, and they're not in the Champions League. So it's not a hatred for Manchester United. It's a cold, hard reality. And if Manchester United do not accept the reality of now and continue to try and dine off their past, then the club will never succeed.
I couldn't agree with you more. And people have got to learn to differentiate. Like, I'm happy with what I've seen Ten Hag and his people doing at the club. That doesn't mean I'm happy with the way United have been run for the last 9 years. They are ring fenced from each other to a certain degree. So I totally get you there, Ben. I do. Staying with Chelsea, we obviously know about the Jules Kounde situation. What is the latest with Kimpembe and their pursuit of him?
Kimpembe is a really difficult one, simply because he had a conversation with Christophe Gaultier, and a new manager and even sporting director in Luis Campos has kind of complicated the situation a little bit, because they've all got fresh impressions. And Gaultier in particular really likes Kimpembe and has made it clear to a player that's been very loyal to PSG that the final decision on his future will be his and his alone. So PSG are open to a sale for the right price. Chelsea have not agreed a fee with Kimpembe. It's not an impossible transfer. They've not ended all interest, but it is very, very clear that Kimpembe is settled in Paris, and therefore, even if a fee is to be agreed over the coming days or weeks, Kimpembe could still roadblock that. And it's not unthinkable either that the interest will spark PSG into actually offering Kimpembe a new contract, believed, speaking to sources, to be until 2024. So it's all about convincing the player. I think that eventually a back and forth would establish a fee with PSG, because they are listening to offers, but they're very respectful of Kimpembe, who's been a loyal servant to PSG and has been at the club for a number of years. So that's the complication at the moment. It's all about convincing Kimpembe. Juventus tried and failed, and he is intrigued by a Chelsea move, but not necessarily to the point where he would leave if PSG continue to reiterate that he's not surplus to requirements. And obviously the other factor, which is interesting about this mass swoop for defenders on the Chelsea side, is just that each target is asking the same question. What system are you playing, and where do I fit into your plans? And Kimpembe and Kounde will be saying the same thing, that you've got Koulibaly, you've got Silva, you've still got Colwill, even though I think that all of these targets will believe that they'll be above that youngster in the pecking order. And naturally, that is a reasonable assumption, despite the potential of Levi Colwill. But then if you are Kounde and you are younger and you know that Koulibaly is there, you'll want that reiteration of, well, who are you going to sign? And is a right back or a centre back / right back also going to come in? And then is it a back three or a back four? And I think that's the most intriguing thing to watch for Chelsea in pre-season, that we all know what Thomas Tuchel's favoured formation is, that kind of 3-4-2-1 or even a 3-4-3. But my understanding is that Chelsea might even try a back four at some point, either in pre-season or next season, and then that extra defender across a more traditional back line could change the dynamic and be of appeal to various targets that might be incoming to Stamford Bridge. So I think a lot of it is going to be about how Thomas Tuchel sells the role if talks proceed with Kimpembe, and how integral he is going to be, and what his relationship in the pecking order is going to be like comparative to either other actual incomings or prospective incomings. And then from there, he'll have to make a decision. But he's in no rush. PSG are in no rush. And it's more challenging at the moment than Kounde, because Chelsea think that they can agree imminently a fee with Sevilla, and then it's all just down to the player. Whereas with Kimpembe, they haven't got a fee with PSG, and the player is less likely to be swayed by a move away from PSG, providing, as I say, PSG continue to reiterate that he's part of their plans.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense there. And again, it's what I love about the transfers this summer and the level of detail that's coming out. You know, you've got this Jules Kounde situation. He may prefer one of either Chelsea or Barcelona, but he may end up at the other club because, you know, deals between them. He's open to both. He might have a preference, but he may end up at the club that that isn't his number one choice. And of course, there's been so much talk this summer about should only sign players that have this diehard, burning desire to want to sign you. And then you look at the Jules Kounde situation in itself from Chelsea's perspective. They clearly cooled the interest to try and get De Ligt, and it didn't work. Now they've gone back for Jules Kounde. But the same logic fans have pushed all summer. Jules Kounde should say no because, I'm not the number one priority. But in the professional world of football, decision making doesn't really work like that. It's all based on what's the best choice for me and my career, irrespective that Chelsea tried to go elsewhere. And so I really enjoyed about these deals this summer, really exposing the true nature of transfers, the professional side of football, as opposed to the, and I love the fan side of football. It's why I do what I do, but it's really intriguing to see, no doubt. I just want to say a big thank you, by the way. We have a really cheesy noise that we play here. I'm very sorry, Ben, but thank you to Lee for becoming a legend and superfan member of the Football Terrace. It means a great deal to us, the level of commitment all of our members show. So thank you very much indeed. We're going to stay with Chelsea, though. Still, it's kind of Chelsea stroke Man United. Obviously, yesterday, loads of reports out of Spain that Chelsea Football Club were about to make a bid for Frankie de Jong. It's prompted a lot of talk about United still, but United are going to make another big push, according to Fabrizio Romano. What's your understanding of the situation with de Jong, both with him leaving Barca and with Chelsea now getting themselves involved?
Well, I think Chelsea's point of view, the main thing here to reiterate is just that they are not going to move in a formal sense until they're aware of whether de Jong would be open to the move. And they will have learned lessons from the Manchester United saga, and they will have seen and heard both publicly and privately a lot of conflicting reports from Barcelona don't want to sell to de Jong wants to stay to de Jong wants to stay, but he doesn't want to take a pay cut to de Jong is just going to fight for his place to Xavi wants to keep de Jong to Barcelona actually are just delaying time so they can somehow try and get Bernardo Silva and then get rid of de Jong and use ultimately the money from that transfer to fund a replacement like Silva. And all of this is only part of the picture, because to reiterate again, what Laporta says in public and does with clubs in private are two completely different things. So the reality of the situation is that Chelsea have been privately told directly from Barcelona that de Jong is available and encouraged, if they are interested in the player, to make a move. And Chelsea's interest in de Jong is genuine. But that position and that signing is not their priority at the moment. And they haven't moved in any kind of advanced sense yet. But what is clear is that Barcelona will entertain offers. And that should be obvious from the back and forth in such meticulous detail with Manchester United to finally get to a fee. So Chelsea, unlike Manchester United, are almost approaching a possible transfer, still very early stages and nothing advanced. But if they proceed, they're approaching it in the opposite way to Manchester United. They will not go to Barcelona and have a huge back and forth over fee, over add-ons, because they feel like Manchester United have done the legwork. They know the approximate valuation. They know the ballpark figure. And that's not to say their bid will be identical, but they're aware of what it's going to take, somewhere in the region of the 65 million euros upfront fee plus add-ons to the tune of 20 odd million. Maybe they get a little bit cheaper if Barcelona have an urgency to sell suddenly. But fundamentally, the approach of Chelsea, and I think all other interested suitors now, is to actually get de Jong buy-in first. Because if the club that wants de Jong can't get that, then they fear, as has been proven with Manchester United, that they're wasting their time. So this is a name, I think, that is on Chelsea's radar, very loosely speaking, in an area that is low priority comparative to others. But it's one to watch during the window, because I think that there is a feeling amongst all other suitors that Manchester United are going to fail in signing Frankie de Jong for the reason that it's dragged on, that the player's always been a little bit reticent about moving, that a Chelsea can offer Champions League football and a Manchester United can't. But it's not a direct race at the moment. That's the key thing to reiterate, that everyone's getting like reasonably excited about de Jong to Chelsea. Some people are saying that Bayern Munich might enter the race as well. But I would classify the situation more as Chelsea are weighing up whether this is something that they want to proceed with. And I would expect them to make a decision on that over the coming days and weeks to see whether they actually want to come to the table and discuss further. And how they approach De Jong will be based upon whether or not they get an honest appraisal of whether De Jong actually wants to leave. And right now, there's still a big question mark, because the player himself seemingly is trying to do everything he can to still stay at Barcelona. But because he won't take, or doesn't want to take, that massive pay cut, that is why the door is open. And Chelsea are one of the teams monitoring the situation, but there is nothing further than that at the time of recording.
Yeah, and I think that's a sensible thing for Chelsea to do. And, you know, I had a lot of United fans when we sort of reported on the imminent Chelsea bid, according to the reports last night, that were like, well, why are Chelsea fans happy to go and sign a player that doesn't want to leave Barca? We got like ridiculed for it. And firstly, I was like, listen, Man United get ridiculed. Man United have been ridiculed this year for signing good players. Like, we only squad that's not, like, certain outlets have sort of like, oh, why sign Eriksen? He's not going to play in front of Bruno. It's ridiculous. It's like, well, that's weird. I said, but at the same time, you've got this thing with Chelsea where they're not going. There is no. I think you're bang on. There is no point putting in a formal bid if the player is going to say no to you. And I think that still begs a question around Man United. What have they been told privately compared to what they've been, like, what's being said publicly? Who's feeding the information that Chelsea are going to put in an imminent bid? Who's feeding the information that keeps saying that he is not leaving Barca for love nor money? Who's fed the majority of the British press? You know, the Simon Stones of this world, Simon Peaches, and these articles have basically said it's the deferred wages that's holding this up, opposed to anything else. So there's all these different stories circulating. I think that's where any new club getting involved has got to be absolutely 100% sure around what's going on before they start putting in bids, because we know nobody likes to be rejected, quote unquote, as fans put it. But viewers, do me a big favor as you're tuning in. Please smash the like button. If this gets past 1,250 likes, we will gift out 15 free memberships. So make sure you're hitting the like button and subscribing and turning on the bell notification button as well. We do have a question, actually, as we move across to a bit of talk about Chelsea to Arsenal. Been a number of reports recently that Bukayo Saka to City, that Sammy McBell was kind of said he's the number one target. Fabrizio kind of alluded to Arsenal wanting to tie down Saka's contract because some big Premier League clubs are looking at him. And you'd only assume he's talking about Liverpool or City, really. He didn't use names. Have you heard much about this at all? Is this something that is in your eyes is seen as genuine? Have you been told that teams are circling for Bukayo Saka, or is this very much maybe a ploy to just force Arsenal to hurry up and get him to sign this deal?
Well, I mean, it's no surprise, is it, that there's huge interest in Saka, because he's a phenomenal player that ticks a lot of boxes. And Manchester City saw Saka's quality firsthand when the Arsenal player swept home that superb strike to give his team the lead when City played Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium. And I think that Manchester City fans will probably look at a player like Saka and almost see him, even though there's depth and already incomings, as a kind of Raheem Sterling replacement. But my understanding is that Saka at this stage is not touchable, and that Mikel Arteta has made it clear to the Arsenal hierarchy that he wants a new deal tabled, and Saka is quite prepared to sign that as well. So I think Arsenal's position is really clear, that Saka will sign a new contract. That's not to say that the Manchester City links are not genuine, because you can't have the attributes that Saka has shown over the course of his time at Arsenal without clubs like the Premier League champions, and no doubt other European giants as well, keeping across his taps. So I think that Arsenal want to tie him down for two reasons. First of all, because in the short term, he is only an Arsenal player. I don't see any possibility where he leaves this window. But in addition to that, if there is a longer term strategy from the Manchester Cities of this world, then Arsenal need to tie him down for as long as they possibly can to protect a possible transfer fee if there becomes an eventuality where they need to sell. So the links are natural, and it doesn't remotely surprise me that Manchester City have him, if you like, on their long-term radar. And this, again, is the thing to understand about the wording that people use during the window, and how agents and clubs intimate when a story is either correct, rumor, or somewhere in between the two, the reality of that is born out of the fact that clubs work multiple windows ahead. So Manchester City can have Saka on their list, but that doesn't mean that they think they're going to get him now or they're going to do anything with it imminently. But that's not to say it is incorrect to make the link. It's just to say that it's not feasible. So Arsenal, I don't think, especially given the window that they've had, would entertain anything for Saka at this stage. And the most likely scenario, as per what Mikel Arteta has wanted, and he'll be backed by his football club, is to get Saka to sign a new contract and tie him down at Arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. I see Saka as a player. I mean, look, if City came in today with a crazy offer, and I'm just going to throw a number out, £100 million, player on 200 grand a week, we want you to be the replacement now for Riyad Mahrez, that would change the scenario, as we all know. But I think he signs a new deal. But I think I'm not saying he's going to have a buyout clause, but I think he needs to sign a new deal. But if I was Saka and I was advising him, it'd be like, let's sign the new deal. Let's get the pay rise. Let's secure any future transfer fee for Arsenal. But let's ensure what I'd like to see Saka do, and I remember saying this about a few United youngsters a couple of years ago, is sign your new deals, but have an exit strategy, because there is still as much as Arsenal have improved and there's a feel-good factor around the club and Arsenal fans believing what they're doing again, there is no foregone conclusion that they're going to get back to where a player like Saka deserves to be, and that's challenging for Premier League titles, able to win Champions Leagues. I wouldn't like to see him do what Harry Kane has done. I feel like maybe they do something now with Antonio Conte, but it'd be a shame for Harry Kane to get to the end of his career and never really win anything or be part of a team that's achieved actual greatness within the game. So I think Saka's got to weigh that up. And I think he's a player that could leave Arsenal in the next couple of years if they don't go back to challenging for league titles, etc. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he will sign that new deal as of now. Billy here says, big up Terry and the hair. Oh yeah, the hair's looking good. Thank you very much. And Ben with the orange wall. I'm back from my brain problems, bro. How do I get my membership back? I mean, there's a link if you want to sign up for your membership again. There's a link in the description below that you can use. I'll post it in the live comment section as well. So thank you very much. If you want to become a member again, Billy, thank you very much. And I'm glad that you're feeling a lot better in your life now. Thank you very much indeed. I wanted to stay with Arsenal actually, because they keep talking about what's Arsenal going to do next is really what I wanted to get from you, because there's talk of Paqueta, there's such contrary reports again on Youri Tielemans. Almost he could be staying now at Leicester, according to some reports yesterday, and others saying Arsenal will make this move. There are also reports that Arsenal will look for another winger because, of course, they missed out on Rafinha. What's your understanding of Arsenal's next move in the transfer market?
Well, first of all, Arsenal have had a great window and they're starting to build depth in a number of positions. But I do think that they're still looking for that creative player, whether it's a Paqueta type or Tielemans style, because it provides the depth necessary to push for Champions League football. And in addition to that, they had such a quiet January window that a couple more incomings still might be possible at Arsenal. With Tielemans, the situation is exactly the same. The player wants Arsenal, and if Arsenal make a bid, that deal will get done relatively quickly. But as yet, Arsenal haven't moved on to Tielemans, and we all know, and we said it last week, that Zinchenko priority, and that deal is now done. And the advantage of Zinchenko is that he plays in midfield for Ukraine and has the ability to play left back and also inverted left back. So that again provides depth. And I think that Tielemans has a big decision to make because he doesn't want to stay at Leicester. That is my understanding on the situation. And he'll have further talks reiterating that to Brendan Rodgers this week. Leicester would love him to sign a short-term contract and then the transfer fee rockets up. But I think that in the same way that if another club outside of Arsenal bids for Tielemans, it will suddenly spark a flurry of bids from various people that are interested. If Leicester suggest Tielemans is going to sign a new deal, that will also prompt some bids because clubs are well aware that he's at a bargain price now, but won't be if he extends his contract. And you can understand, again, in the World Cup year, why Tielemans wants the situation sorted. He's anticipating leaving this window, and he's not going to rush into any extension at Leicester before he hears offers from the various suitors. And they're growing by the day, to be perfectly honest with you. So Arsenal are still there. And although Tielemans hasn't been the number one priority, as they tick off others, particularly Jesus and Zinchenko, they may well revisit Tielemans. That deal is still at the table, and the negotiation with Leicester isn't going to take a great deal. Leicester may try and hold out for something above 30 million, and Arsenal have always been of the belief that it's mid-20s, and that should be enough because of his contract situation. But nothing formal has been placed ever by Arsenal. They are monitoring the situation. They're still in contact with Tielemans' representatives, and it remains to be seen whether they move. But there's still a very real possibility that that deal to Arsenal does get done during the window. And then if it isn't Arsenal, you have Manchester United, and Tielemans is a cheaper version of De Jong and a more gettable one. And I think whereas under Ralf Rangnick, Tielemans didn't really want Manchester United when the possibility was explored in January. Leicester were never going to sell in January, but Manchester United under Rangnick explored the Tielemans possibility then with a view to the summer. And Tielemans, who at that point thought that Arsenal was pretty certain, was very clear to Manchester United that it wasn't a club he wanted to join. Now, if things become a bit more stable and under a new manager that rates him, there's a possibility that Manchester United come back in, especially if they don't get De Jong. And that one will be interesting to see whether Manchester United can change Tielemans' mind. And then Newcastle are still lurking as well. So my understanding is that, of course, Leicester would love Tielemans to re-sign, but I still think that he will go somewhere this window. And then with Paqueta, there's mixed reports out there, but my understanding remains that Arsenal have not bid. They've not placed a formal offer. There's nothing advanced, but the interest is very real. And that's the same for Newcastle United as well. And the challenge is really in agreeing a price. So although some reports are out there saying that he'll be allowed to leave at a cut price deal for closer to 50 million euros or about 35 million quid, the reality of the situation is that Jean-Michel Aulas wants something closer to 60 to 65 million euros. And even that is 15 million euros less than what Lyon were asking for in January. So the negotiation is going to be quite tough. And the other factor to consider here is just that Aulas speaks very bullishly and candidly in public, talking about how there's offers and the player wants a fresh challenge and is open to the Premier League. So all of that helps suitors like Arsenal and Newcastle United. But in this whole mix is also John Textor, who is the new incoming Lyon majority owner. And at the moment, he's not officially there, so doesn't have a say. But he's spoken about Lyon challenging PSG. And he doesn't really want Paqueta to leave. So there's a whole internal power dynamic. Is Aulas pushing the sale of Paqueta before Textor arrives? Is it just clear the player wants to leave, so Lyon are trying to facilitate those wishes? Or is it actually a case of Aulas selling Paqueta, so then when Textor finally comes in, he can distance himself from that and still have the ambition to challenge PSG, but actually say that sale was done before my time? So there's a whole kind of struggle really between the view of Aulas, the view of Textor, and the view of the player. And if Textor had his way, Paqueta simply wouldn't be sold. But the player is intent on a fresh challenge, and that is why there's a window of opportunity. But as yet, nothing advanced, nothing formal around either Arsenal or Newcastle. But the interest is very real. And what Arsenal are doing in particular, or have done over the last few weeks, is they've spoken directly to the player's agent rather than Lyon. And that's to try and establish if there is a genuine desire of the player to move to Arsenal. And that's just due diligence. And then if they got that buy-in, they might proceed later in the window. But if they don't get that buy-in because they don't want to be involved in a bidding war and due to the volume of interest, then they won't proceed any further. So it's very early stages. He is a player that Arsenal admire. There's no denying that. But there is nothing from that admiration that has translated into anything formal or advanced at this stage.
Totally get that. I really, really do. Ben, I know you've got a hard stop because you've got some other work to jump on with. We're going to stay with the audience for a little while, go through some more of their questions and what they've got to say. Ben, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, mate, and giving us your insight. It's always massively appreciated. It really, especially the detail you go into, educating us all every single week. So thank you very much, Ben.
Absolute pleasure, and we'll speak next week.
Cheers, Ben. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Thank you. Obviously, been able to do a little bit longer. Ben had to shoot off. He's literally traveling. He's in a hotel room. So we had him for like 55 minutes today. And I wanted to keep talking to you. And I want to pull on what Ben just said there. I want to pull on what Ben just said because I think it's really, really, really important. Around a lot of these deals at the minute, Paqueta, youri Tielemans, as an example. What do Chelsea do after they complete their defensive reinforcements? Why has Cucurella at Man City taken this amount of time, as an example? And that's because, and there's a comment that we put up a few moments ago, and I didn't mean to star it, and I can't find it again now. What about the outgoings? This is a massive part of what's going on right now. What about the outgoings of all of our clubs? Arsenal. There's a number of players that their fans want to see gone. You know, Maitland-Niles as an example. You know, you've got Manchester United with Phil Jones. You know, is Bailly going to stay or is Bailly going to go? What about AWB? You know, there's, again, 2 or 3 players in these positions where you think this is also a stumbling block. And this is why earlier on in the season, I was telling fans to relax. Because, Terry with the spin. The reason that I say this is because all of our clubs are probably going to make another signing or two, but they're going to be delayed until certain players are sold. And this is where you can't, generally speaking, you can't always get all of your business done before the season kicks off. You have to move people on. You look at Manchester City. There's a lot of people that think Man City are brewing something behind the scenes away from Cucurella. With the level of attacking players they're allowed to leave, Bernardo Silva may be allowed to go. Is there a quote-unquote secret signing that they might go for? They might attempt to bring in. Who knows? Like, you know, I'm speculating here. But I think fans have got to start, and this is of all clubs. Once you pick your third or your fourth signing, who else have you got to see leave before you bring people in? Now, I know that Spurs have gone out and signed 6 people. One of them's a backup goalie. She moved it down to 5 as an example. You know, there's been a couple of signings in there, you know, a loan signing, which nobody else really cares too much about. They've signed 3 or 4 proper long-term first-team players. And interestingly, Antonio Conte himself has said that he didn't even want Jed Spence. Jed Spence is a Tottenham club signing, not an Antonio Conte signing, which is an intriguing dynamic. And I've got to read into more. I would like to watch what he said more than read it. But most clubs, it's 3 to 4 signings. And what you may now see between now and the close of the window is 2 or 3 outgoings and 1 more signing come in. So I think for me, it's a real intriguing situation. I want to say a big thank you, by the way. Thank you here to Billy, who has just become a legend and super fan again of the Football Terrace. Now, we are up for giving away up to 15 free memberships today. 1,250 likes on the show. Get it done now and let's move forward. Any more questions that you've got, any more thoughts that you've got, let us know. But an overview of what Ben Jacobs went through today. He believes there's a big chance that Jules Kounde, Chelsea, Sevilla agree the deal today. Doesn't mean it will complete because Barca are still circulating. It is reported by a number of other journalists that Barca are the preferred destination of Jules Kounde, but Jules Kounde would still like to join Chelsea. We also spoke on Kimpembe, a harder deal for Chelsea to get done because Kimpembe doesn't want to leave PSG. PSG are open to letting him leave, but the decision will come down to Kimpembe. When all the offers are on the table, if an acceptable bid comes in, then a decision will be made. We spoke about the Frankie de Jong situation and very much Man United, quote unquote, still leading the race, but Chelsea are circling, according to Ben Jacobs. They haven't made a formal offer. They're looking at the situation. They know how much it's going to cost because Man United have done the legwork. But Chelsea, just like the media, are not convinced that Frankie de Jong actually wants to leave Barca. And what they don't want to do is start putting in bids for the player to say no to them. So the media are kind of, in England, are pushing out the same notion around de Jong to Chelsea as they are de Jong to Man United. Does he really want to leave? Are the deferred wages an issue? As opposed to, there's a completely different story for Chelsea from the media. It'd be a little bit strange. And that would cause more problems, but it seems pretty consistent. The Ronaldo update that was given was very, very intriguing indeed. Ronaldo essentially can't find a suitor, but the Atletico Madrid links are real, are genuine, and could happen. So they are real and they are out there. I want to say a big thank you as well to Kane Salter, who has upgraded his membership to legend and super fan status. You absolute gorgeous man yourself. Thank you very much indeed for doing that for us. Terry, clubs doing secret Santa, secret signings in the hot summer. Yeah, can you imagine? How likely is Kounde to join Chelsea? Great question. Right, listen, I think it's close. He is close to signing, but Barca are in the background. Barca could swoop in. Barca could take him away. There's no shadow of a doubt around that. That could happen. Chelsea have a higher percentage chance of landing this player, though. There's too many credible reports from too many credible journalists here in the UK. The guys from The Guardian, like Jacob. You've got the likes of Nazir Kinsella, of course, Simon Phillips, Ben Jacobs. So many talking about how close this deal is. So it is very, very close indeed. But if Barca match the offer, if Barca match the personal terms, which they've reportedly done, don't rule them out from winning the race. Remember, football fans, we've been educated on this all summer by the likes of Ben Jacob and more. You know, proper journalists, not bullet point journalists. Players can agree terms with multiple clubs at the same time. And that's what Jules Kounde has done. And then in the end, he'll make his final decision. So, you know, when you see a journalist say, Joe Bloggs has agreed personal terms with Liverpool and then doesn't sign for Liverpool, he weren't lying. It's just the player in the end made a different decision to go elsewhere because maybe the new personal terms offered by a different club were better. It's life. I've accepted 3 job offers at the same time, verbally, and then waited before signing the paperwork and gone, right, which is the best place for me? This one, boom. Signed that, rejected the other 2. But I agreed to the terms. That's acceptable to me. I now need time to go away and think about it. That's just normal in business. You've all had job offers like that. All of you have. Most of you have, I would say. Erik Ten Hag with his super chat says, what's your thoughts if United fail and get rejected by De Jong and sign no one else? So if we're rejected by De Jong and he says, I am not coming to Man United because I don't want to play for Man United, and we don't buy someone else, I'd be pissed. If he says I'm not leaving until I get my deferred wages sorted, and Man United think that by January that could be done, by next summer that could be done, I'd be happy for us to wait. I'd be happy for us to wait so the right players end up at the club. That would be the most sensible thing for Manchester United to do in that scenario. Anyone know Clancy from... I don't know what that means, my friend, so no, I don't. I don't know what that's about. Wizard here says, I disagree because the Liga said Barca don't have the budget under the salary cap to sign any more to this certain point. Well, look, they haven't even been able to register everyone that's come in. But this is where, again, as a Man United fan, you probably want Barcelona to get Kounde, because the more they sign and the more players they need to register, the more desperate they get to make the signings. And if they become desperate, then they might end up coming to an agreement. Again, I've read another report this morning that simply states that Barca are just waiting for Man United to maybe increase their bid even further or offer to pay De Jong the deferred wages, and then it'll all go through. A lot of people don't want to believe that because that would suggest that De Jong wants to leave and wants to come to Man United, and nobody wants to believe that notion. But there's so many varying reports. This is an interesting one. This guy could lie for a living. There is nothing like that Kounde to Chelsea. So you think I'm making up Kounde to Chelsea links? Oh my! Listen, Antoinette. I'm sorry, but that is the most stupid comment I've had in weeks. Oh my God. Welshman United fan here says Anthony and Tielemans. Listen, if De Jong by the end of the summer says, you know what, guys, your personal terms are great. I like the idea, but I'm just going to stay. And I'm going to stay for the long haul. I'm going to take a pay cut. I've decided I'm staying. Then, you know, he thanks Man United, shakes their hand and moves on. Then we go on to another player and we kind of do what we do from there. And that point is what I would suggest. Barca leaving it late because they have to terminate Frankie de Jong's contract and pay him out of termination. I don't know about terminating his contract as such, but we will see. Harry the Blue, it was, bro. Okay. Liverpool are dropping standards this season. If Núñez doesn't show up, Sadio had won Liverpool many matches with a scoreline 1-0. Listen, whenever you've had a team that's been great and then people start to leave, there's always a fear of the new replacements not being as good. You know, there's only been a couple of managers who have rebuilt title-winning teams to go back on to win titles in the Premier League era. Fergie did it. Wenger did it because his first team he had one and then he rebuilt it one again. But, you know, Chelsea have never had a manager that's had a title-winning team that's fallen away and then been rebuilt by that manager. So we don't know if any of those guys can do it. And Pep, I wouldn't say Pep's done it yet because Pep's team haven't. Pep's kind of done it, but he's done it in a really good sort of process where they've maintained dominance. But this now remains to be seen whether Liverpool, with some of their stars getting older, whether they can replace them and stay as competitive. I think Liverpool will. They've got the capabilities, they've got the manager, they've got lots of great players. But it becomes a real, interesting take. Chowdhury here with a member super chat says, let me find it here. He says, big up to you, Terry. Since 2017, the summer FFG ruined my summer and they are doing it again. FSG out is what he says there as a Liverpool fan. I hear you on that. I mean, there's just no news around either. There isn't even anything to sink your teeth into. It must be really boring this time of the year to be there. Terry, any City news? I did see earlier on today, courtesy of Fabrizio Romano, that the Cucurella deal is going to speed up. It's funny how no one's moaning about how long that's taken, how terrible it is that a club has taken all summer to get a deal like that done. But that seems to just be par for the course. But yeah, they're looking at that. And I do think there's another player that might come into Chelsea, into Man City. Don't know who, but an attacking player out of the blue. I've heard, or a midfielder. I've heard Jude Bellingham's name. There's been Saka's name. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another big deal emerge. But listen, everyone that has tuned in today, big respect. Back later on this afternoon for a live calling show where I want to get you all involved. We're going to open up the lines for you to phone in and have your say. Of course, talking about the transfers, reviewing preseason. We haven't done any in the mornings in the last few days, mainly based on how busy I've been in that day. And we've had early live shows with football match reactions, and we had Dean Jones on early as well. So live calling show this afternoon for you all to come on and have your say. So make sure you're joining us. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again.